Good afternoon, welcome to Cannabiz Africa, your weekly sort of digest that brings you up-to-date things happening in the African cannabis industry, as well as a few things happening internationally. Linda Siboto, how are you today?
I'm good. And yourself, Trenton, how's it going?
All good, all good. It's been a busy week, lots going on, and it's only Tuesday. So, yeah, we've got some interesting stuff coming up in the news today. We're talking the hemp train, which is this Canadian technology to process hemp. That is apparently coming to the Transkei. We'll get more from that on Brett in a minute. And also we're talking about hemp, cannabis in Zimbabwe. And apparently there's a Las Vegas company that have hedged their bets and are investing into Zimbabwe. So it'll be interesting to hear about that. A few more things are coming up as well, Linda. What are they?
Yeah, so I mean, there's getting high on hemp. So Noxy's got a very interesting story about that. So stay tuned for that because I want to get some hemp now. And then also the high on hemp, indeed. And then the other thing is about Taliban. So the Taliban's having a bit of an issue now, since now they want to stop dealing in drugs, but that's what funded them initially. So Brett's going to give us a little lowdown on that. So it's interesting how that's coming to the Cannasphere.
Great. Let's get straight into it. Over to you, Brett, in the news desk in Limpopo.
In the Cannasphere news headlines this week, Quattro Canna Holdings in a 75 million rand deal to bring Canadian hemp technology to South Africa, controversy over this Quattro's plans for a Pondoland hemp factory, a Las Vegas company takes a long-term gamble on Zimbabwean weed, and the Taliban say they will stop the illegal Afghan drug trade despite using narco dollars to seize power. Good morning, I'm Brett Hilton-Barber at the Cannasphere news desk in Limpopo. Sandton-based Quattro Canna Holdings says it has secured a 75 million rand hemp technology deal with Canadian company Greenfields Technology Corporation. The deal gives Quattro rights to Greenfields' hemp train brand and will involve the construction of a hemp processing plant near Umtata in what used to be Transkei. Quattro CEO Sizwe Nkukwana says the company has stakeholder agreements for over 1,000 hectares of agricultural land in the Eastern Cape and will begin planting hemp when permits are issued this October. The hemp train rights allow Quattro to put up hemp processing facilities throughout South Africa. There's been mixed reaction in the cannabis industry to Quattro's plans. The access to top Canadian hemp technology is a positive, say observers, as Hemp Train is a reputable brand. However, a Cannasphere source who wishes to remain anonymous says there will be opposition to widespread hemp planting in Pondoland, as this will contaminate the high THC cannabis strains that already exist in the area. Representatives of the thousands of illegal growers in the Eastern Cape say they do not want to switch from growing adult use cannabis for the illegal market in favor of lower paying hemp. A business commentator told Cannasphere that investment in the hemp industry right now is high risk because of the lack of a legal framework. Hemp is still legally classified as a narcotic, not as an agricultural crop. Where hemp is grown is a crucial question that affects the whole cannabis industry. There's no answer in the National Cannabis Master Plan as to whether certain areas of the country will be demarcated for growing hemp. Where hemp and cannabis have been legalized, there have been issues over cross-pollination affecting both subspecies. In fact, Humboldt County, the home of California's recreational marijuana crop, hemp farming has been banned altogether. It's not good for the high THC business. Las Vegas, as they say, is a gambling town. Well, a Vegas cannabis company is taking a long bet on Zimbabwe being one of the world's lowest cost producers of medical cannabis. Vertical Medical International has bought Eco Equity, a London-based company with 3 Zimbabwe licenses, for $20 million in cash and an undisclosed number of shares. Eco Equity has been valued by Vertical as being worth $200 million. That's 3 billion rand. Sure, that's quite an astronomical valuation, even though, particularly because it still has to ship its first export crop. Vertical says it expects Eco Equity to generate upwards of 3 billion rands worth of quality medicinal cannabis for the international market over the next 5 years. And in other international news, the US State Department says the Taliban relied heavily on rent that it extracted from the illegal opium trade to finance its war against Kabul. Now the fundamentalist group has seized power. It has come out against the drug trade. However, several international organizations believe the Taliban has come to rely on the illegal trade in opium and hashish, which account for over 40% of Afghanistan's GDP. The Taliban has also inherited a crystal meth crisis. Since 2017, the price of crystal meth has plummeted in Afghanistan because a natural weed, grass, has been found to contain the high amounts of ephedrine that are needed to make crystal meth. As a result, the United Nations believe that 1 in 10 adult Afghanis has a drug problem, and that crystal meth has bypassed hashish and now rivals opium as that country's main export commodity. That's quite something to get your head around here, Trenton.
Yeah, I just feel like sad to hear that about Afghanistan. You know, all the drama and all the things they're going through, and then to have a meth issue as well. I mean, that's just very, very dark. You know, and I think it's obviously a public statement that the Taliban make, but you know, they're essentially cutting off an oil pipeline because they have been, you know, raising money from that for many, many years, and I can't really imagine that they'll do what they say. You know, they still need to fund what they're doing. So,
yeah. No, there's a lot of questions there. And Afghanistan remembers the original home, many say, of indica, and that many of today's strains are founded on Afghan Kush or Afghan strains that have now made themselves into the mainstream. So, you know, what Afghanistan's given the world a lot. We owe to them to help them out of the crisis they're in now. But remember, China says it will never get involved in Afghanistan because it took a decision, I think, about a century ago that said Afghanistan would forever be the graveyard of empires.
Yeah, shame. And there's some people stuck in the middle of these ideological wars. And it's funny because obviously, you know, as you say, like Afghan Kush and those kind of those landrace strains have been made globally famous, but the people on the ground have benefited zero. It's quite similar to, you know, Durban poison being made, you know, globally famous by all the farmers in the, sort of the Eastern Cape. But again, at the moment, not the beneficiaries of any of them. And yeah, it's interesting that you know, obviously the hemp train coming to South Africa is big news and great in many ways, because one of the biggest issues with bringing the hemp industry online is the lack of processing. And the hemp train is a very tried and tested piece of machinery that works really well. It's not the cheapest. You know, I think one of their models is their top model is about $950,000. So it's an expensive piece of kit. But ultimately, we need to industrialize to get hemp moving. But in terms of putting it in the location, just a very uneducated and unresearched decision, and it's going to have, you know, potentially super negative impact on that local populace. So that's a bit disappointing.
The other thing that I found interesting about the deal is that 75 million rand that Quattro's apparently paying for the rights to have the technology here and to put up that factory in Mthatha, that's actually money going out of the country. And this deal that the Las Vegas company has done to buy the Zimbabwean cannabis factory, it's a deal done with the London head office. So what we're seeing is all this money, African assets, not really being given the resources other than to develop the grow ops, but all the deals aren't really seeing that cannabis cash coming into South Africa and Africa right yet. And that, I think, is a big problem that, you know, that government needs to take on. But if they're coming up with allowing things like a hemp farming to take place in high THC growing areas in Ponderland, one fears that with all our best intentions, cannabis reform in this country could backfire really, really badly.
Absolutely, and then we get back to the conversation of, you know, colonization of cannabis. It's all good and well to have dollars and pounds and euros into Africa, which we need, but the conditions that we take that money are often very, you know, underhand and don't benefit the African continent in the long run. So, yeah, complex. The exciting thing is, and the positive thing is that there's a lot of stuff happening and things are moving forward. I went to a farm in Franschhoek yesterday, which is setting up, and the state of the farm is unbelievable. It was just a world-class setup, one of the slickest I've ever seen. They're due to come online in the next few months. So I came away very inspired. So we've got these sort of conflicting things of amazing news and then terrible news, and amazing news and terrible news. And it's certainly not the easiest road to travel, but I believe that cannabis will win in the end, and that it will get to a place where many people can thrive and prosper from this, but not without a fight.
Yeah. Well, it's to misquote Clem Sant. I think with cannabis reform, we're going to walk the high road and the low road simultaneously.
Absolutely. And on that high note, let's cross over to Noxy in Johannesburg for our update on some lighter stuff, Canna lifestyle. Over to you, Noxy.
Thanks, Trenton. Well, on the lighter side of things, the Canna streets are abuzz as a new synthetic form of cannabis takes off in the States. THCO, or ATHC as some like to call it, is actually a lab-created cannabinoid that is made with a small amount of a synthetic chemical in the acetate family called acetic anhydride. It takes some pretty hefty and volatile chemistry to create THCO in a lab, so please do not try this at home unless you want to burn your house down or, God forbid, your eyebrows. How is this THCO made? Well, first, CBD is extracted from the hemp plant. Then Delta-8 is extracted from the CBD. And then finally, the acetate anhydride is added to the Delta-8, giving you THCO. I'm sure you're wondering what makes this THCO so special. Well, in addition to it being just this crazy new thing that gets you super high, it's actually a molecule to the addition of acetate to the molecule of the base THC does one very important thing, and that makes the THC molecule stronger. Research has found that it's roughly 3 times stronger than conventional THC. So you get higher than high. It's been called the psychedelic cannabinoid for its borderline hallucinatory effects. The THCO's appeal lies not only in its potency, but also its legal status. Because it is derived from federally legal hemp, THCO products are becoming increasingly popular in the areas where consumers don't have access to legal state licensed THC products. So how is this THCO legal? Well, it's protected by something called the Farm Bill. And this bill legally defines hemp as all parts of the cannabis plant that contain less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC, including isomers and derivatives. Delta-8 is both an isomer and a derivative. THCO is not an isomer, but is legally protected by this Farm Bill because it is, in fact, a derivative. Do you see what they did there? Many who have tried it describe its effects as very spiritual and introspective. Some even liken it to the effect you might get from shrooms. So if you're someone who loves a good, ego-suppressing, spiritually enlightening trip, then THCO is definitely one to look out for. But I wonder if this Farm Bill in the States is in any way similar to our current hemp laws in South Africa. Perhaps Trenton, Linda, and Brett could shed some light if this THCO is viable for us here in Mzansi. Back to you guys. Shake's head.
I'm sorry.
THCO, no.
I'm sorry. But this is an example of when the Americans just take it too far. Okay, so I just did a quick Google on your acetate anhydride. Okay, and just to make a note, I have not researched this, so I'm reading from the first thing that has come up on Google. You know, Google never lies. Breathing acetic anhydride can irritate the nose, throat, and mouth. High concentrations can cause severe lung damage with coughing and shortness of breath. Chronic health effects, blah, blah, blah. Again, I've just read that off the internet, and so I'm not saying that is 100% accurate, but the point is, why are we screwing with cannabis? That is not cannabis. That is an artificial drug. Do not call it cannabis just because it happens to have something slightly extracted. It makes me very sad to see that and to hear these things. I think it is absolutely unnecessary. I would rather lick a frog and get DMT than take a synthetic cannabinoid and smoke it. To be honest.
Why the synthetic vibes? What are we doing?
I think, Trenton, I think one of the things that has caused us to go so far down this particular rabbit hole is that these are ways that people are trying to get around the law. And so instead of just ordinary high THC adult use cannabis being available, the different laws in different states where only hemp is available to be grown under a particular license. These guys are finding other ways of using the plant, and that is the thing about cannabis. It's an uncontrollable substance, and whatever you try and do, it doesn't react very well to laws. That because it's so integrated. Because you can't say just the stalk or the flower or the leaves should be used and the rest thrown away. And I think that's a real problem that we face, especially in areas where legalization has happened already, is that it's over legalized, it's over legislated, put it that way. Whereas I think it would be easier all around if people just took a step back. Everybody should be able to grow weed, and then you only need a license if you're wanting to claim that it has a specific efficacy, and then you get that relevant license.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a backlash. Linda, would you try it?
No, I'm very happy with weed currently how it stands. I don't think I want to venture out into getting high on hemp if it's in this derivative. I don't think it's safe, and in that respect. And I think these are the things that also pollute sort of the plant in people's minds, the legislation, and the people who set up the laws. They'll be like, oh, look what your cannabis does to the kids, and then now they're not going to discern between the two things being natural and organic, whilst this one's synthetic and done in a lab. So that's my take on that. I'm very upset about that, actually.
Okay, a quick question. 100% frog liquor or not?
Well, I'd like to throw
frog liquor.
I think
frog liquor.
I'm a vegetarian. Sorry, I cannot.
You're only licking the frog, Linda. You're not eating it.
These two guys are being very straight. I think I should go out and try some THCO for the spiritual experience. While
there we go.
They're pure vegan diets.
There seems to be a lot of confusion around just drugs in general. Let's call them I don't want to call them recreational because I'll get lambasted for that. But things that we use that are not necessarily to make us feel better, but I'll get lambasted for that because cannabis is also used. So anyway, my point is that today, last minute, I got invited onto a Zoom call, which was hosted by the Department of Health, and they were discussing the private cannabis bill. And I haven't digested it yet. I was running around, but I just wanted to pull up one slide, which I found very disappointing. If you can just pull this up, Linda. And if you can look at the bottom, where they've said cannabis may not be listed as a food as it does not have nutritional value. Okay. So you can stop that. So cannabis has no nutritional value, so cannot be listed as a food. The context of that is also... just to give them just to put it in context, and I still need to look into it in more detail, but they're basically trying to ensure that, kids are not eating sweets that contain cannabis. And I understand that. But to make a statement that cannabis has no nutritional value is so absurdly ignorant, where from all the stuff I've read, I have had doctors say to me, to my face, that cannabis leaves are like wheatgrass on steroids, and eating cannabis that's not decarboxylated is non-psychoactive. So statements like that, which was a presentation delivered by Anban Pillay, who's the Deputy Director General at the National Department of Health, a very senior person, to deliver statements like that, I think is grossly irresponsible and very disappointing, because the fact that this is being discussed finally is important, but the lack and the ignorance in terms of cannabis is just mind-blowing. And whether there are hidden agendas to try and sort of create and fuel those stigmas, I don't know, but it was very disappointing. Brett, you're nodding your head there.
Yeah, what I find particularly disturbing is that over in the Department of Agriculture, the head of the National Cannabis Master Plan, who's is saying that food and beverages are an absolute essential part of the National Cannabis Master Plan going forward. And he is looking specifically at hemp-derived products, especially for livestock and seeds for their nutritional value. So here we have in the South African government two completely polar views on the value of cannabis and how we expect things to go forward in a cohesive way. It's very difficult to see how that's going to happen. And as we were saying a bit earlier, Trenton, I find that very depressing, actually, in terms of where the consciousness is around trying to get some kind of cannabis reform going in South Africa.
Absolutely. Never a dull moment in this game, people. Never a dull moment. But onwards
Never
we
a
go.
dull moment. For me, it's the whole sweets THC excuse story. There are plenty of chocolates at any store that have liquor in them. And as a parent, you're not walking in that store to go buy your kids a chocolate that has liquor in it. So what is it saying about us as a society, as South Africans? I mean, are we that dumb to actually give our children sweets with THC? Decarboxylated psychoactive THC. It's an insult to our intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the challenges is, though, is, we've got this big underground edibles industry where people make things that are kids' sweets, and I think that is definitely a barrier and a cause for concern. And there was a lot of conversation around the need to protect children. And I absolutely understand that. So I think we'll go through that presentation, we'll digest it, and next week we can unpack it a bit. I know that the Hot Box show this week will most certainly be unpacking that, and it'd be great to get some insight from them on their shows on Thursday. So I think that's it. Without further ado, unless anybody has anything interesting or anything of remote importance to say.
Yes, I do. We have comments. Yeah, we have a comment from Medicine Farmer Growbag Solomon, who says, I 100% agree with Mr. Trenton. Artificial and not pure is not Irie.
Absolutely. Well, we're definitely on the same page. Right. On that note, until next week, have an awesome Tuesday, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Ciao.
Bye.
Peace and love. Bye.